your question. Okay? That isn't, there's a lot of granularity in the function that we just haven't had a chance to get to, but we call that the collector case, and that's what this is. Okay? And imagine, if you will, that the learner has 6 different colors of highlighters in his pocket as they move through this drive-through with this cockpit, so to speak, and that they're able to choose real quick which highlighter they're using, number 1, number 2, number 3, and so forth, and that having chosen it reflects which one they're in, and that whenever they make the collector case active, their question mark turns into a highlighter over the main screen. So they can say, the effect of that is, here are the 6 different collecting tanks. All right? We just collected this one, I think. Number 2, wasn't it? Yeah. So I can make this one active. I just made it active. I can blow it up so that I can look at it and edit it. I can print it. I can file it, or I can trash it. Or I can go right back to here, turn it off, and keep going. So very simply, we have this way of collecting things as they're moved through, as they drive through this learning space.
There's another way to answer that question. That is that the learner is in effect dropping a series of breadcrumbs behind them of how they move through this learning space. So think now what that means in terms of a teacher that's going to be working with a class of learners that has had a particular assignment on gravity. For example, what we could do with this is we could provide a snapshot, perhaps a one-page report for that teacher that says you have 25 children in your class, and of those 25 children, 22 of them did the assignment because we have no trail for 3 of them. So we know that they didn't participate in it. But 22 of them did the assignment, and here's the vocabulary that they had difficulty with. Here are the concepts that they had difficulty understanding. Here are the ways that those concepts were communicated that seem to make the most sense for them. And here are some things that you might want to stress with this class the next day to reinforce this particular lesson. So it gives you an enormous amount of feedback that was previously unavailable. On a very different scale, let's assume now that for my particular use of this system over time, the system keeps a longitudinal record for 2 years perhaps of all of my learning biases, of all of my learning diagnostics and difficulties. Think what kind of insight and understanding that would provide to a classroom teacher when that child comes into the classroom and you're working with them one-on-one. So there's some things about this system that in my opinion, we've only begun to understand and to tap and to appreciate. So all of that is done very automatically and stored and kept, where in the past that there was just no possible way to even think about doing that. And it's the kind of thing that we're doing with special needs children now, but only to a very, very limited extent. So it expands that possibility into areas that we've never even considered in education. I think the potential is just unbelievable.
I was wondering what the potential is and the vehicle for the students' facility for them to be reading here and an encouragement for them to do a lot of reading and research. The opposite is for them to prepare that.
Right. Yeah, I would like to say that while we focused on the one side of this, and this goes back to the question that you had asked earlier, that ultimately, learning and creating are 2 different sides of the same coin, and you can't really do one without the other. And that's really clear and acknowledged. And that this is the way they relate to the resources they create with, and that arguably this is the way they create. That the authoring tool and the interface, while we've separated them here to have some better understanding of the way education as a system might relate to a learner, I want to say that both of them ultimately fuse, and that the powers of the authoring tool to create materials, multimedia reports with all the different powers we're talking about, and the learner tool are both actually the same tool down the road. Now, when we talk about a Nintendo machine or a couple $100 throw it in your knapsack device, that is obviously going to have those powers. However, that device, that hold it in your pocket device, may indeed at some point be something I take home and learn with and study with and go to the library with and all the rest of it, and that it comes and goes chukunk into my keyboard when I'm in school or I'm at some kind of a station. So that's more of a hardware question than it is a philosophy of relationship question. And I want to acknowledge the point that we heard earlier that, you can't learn absent doing something with it either. That's not I'm not suggesting that at all. Right? For the first few years of our lives, we'd have real problems with our arms. And in some respects, and a subtle one, and one not at all ever intended to be accusing or demeaning of education, because it's a question of the resolution of awareness, not fault. I think that the educational system is not responsive at the level that human nervous systems are otherwise responded to, for example, when they learn to walk, or when they learn to hear and differentiate language. But with certain aspects of the way we relate to knowledge that the system just can't respond to us at. And it's teaching us there that our learning needs are irrelevant.
Well, I agree with what you said, and I guess I just saw your picture a little differently.
Okay.
My understanding of what you've described here is that the intellect is very well engaged, that the responsiveness of the system you've described will, in fact, provide a very satisfying experience in terms of learning. I'm wondering if it's going to appear so satisfying that all the other components of learning, which are of course emotional and social and sheerly highly interactive with other people, will appear to be less important because of the immediacy and relevance.
Thank you. One of the things that in a greater time setting we'd do is have a dialogue into the relative significance of informational facilitated learning and interpersonally facilitated learning, and how arguably the biggest obstacle to our relationship with people is how our relationship with information has conditioned us. It's that this is not to say that relating to human beings at the interpersonal learning level, to relating to our own emotional, to the self-esteem, to all the rest of that isn't arguably much more important. I think all that is much more important. What I'm saying is that our relationship with information can model a different learner relationship that we can bring and experiment with in the classroom too, in terms of the way what we might call a dialogue interface or group learner interface, in the way that a group can collaborate in their learning process. So this is not to say that this is more important than any of that. In fact, it's not. I think all this is trivial. It's just a door that happens to be open right now. I'm sorry.
No, I just like the other person. I was, more or less thinking out loud. I was thinking of training for teachers. I was thinking of author bias. Just thoughts were coming to mind, and I was thinking of the setting in which this takes place, because that is as important as the process.
Yes. Yeah. When we say setting, that's just another level of what we mean by environment, right? It's all part of the environment, which is like the matrix that a learner is enmeshed in or immersed in, that forms the basis for how they proceed. No question. And again, while I make a big deal out of this, because that's what I'm here to talk about, the technological parts of it and so forth, it's not what I consider to be most important. It just happens to be the place that's least defended, and that there is something that technology can do to model new relationship processes in. The other concern I heard, having spent a lot of time with authors, is the general mindset of authors is that there's a right way.
That's what I was concerned about.
Yeah, and the whole thing about this is to say, no, there's no such thing as the right way. Right way is a situational occurrence between a real living human learning being and materials that were designed to support them. It's not something that can ever be predicted in advance. So that's why the design of our system is...
It's one